Hello. I'm just getting a couple of things set up here. I want to say welcome. I'm jumping on here as an impromptu. I've been talking an awful lot lately about cognitive control versus habitual control. And what I want to say to that is it is part of our stress response. That's the first thing I want to say. Your stress response is your epigenome. My name is Tammy Davis. For those of you that are new to me, I am the founder of Revolutionary Aromatherapy, which does specialize in pharmacogenomics, um, which means I work with the epigenome. I teach you how to work with the epigenome in regards to your own individual cycles. Your epigenetics are very unique to you. The way your body, or pardon me, the way your brain processes information is very unique to you, which means how it's interfacing with the environment around you is very unique to you. So therein lies the reason why we cannot be using essential oils based on a book, a website, or an AI recommendation. That said, today I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned, your cognitive control versus habitual control. I've been talking an awful lot about it on other platforms, and I thought I would bring it here to LinkedIn because the fact is that it is part of your stress response. When we are in a rest and digest state, in that relaxed mode, we have the ability to think and reason. That's cognitive control. When we are in a state of distress, which could be mental, emotional, physical, meaning your body is physically being distressed, you're in pain, okay, you are or potentially being threatened by something, might be a virus, could be a dog, could be the house burning down, as well as the environment. So all of these factors impact the adaptations that are occurring along the epigenome. This is in fact your stress response. And in accordance to that, it takes the brain from cognitive control to habitual control. And our attention to this, our awareness of this gives us the facility to pay attention to whether or not we're having these automatic reactions. Now, if it is a physical reaction, it's a true physical threat, you don't want to try and override that. I mean, you can, not saying, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but the fact is that you're going to have an automatic instinct in order to do what you need to do to manage yourself in that situation. Okay, that's an automatic behavior. But unfortunately, most of us experience automatic behaviors on a daily, regular basis because we are in this chronic state of fight or flight. Our stress response is activated 24/7. It's not meant to run that way. Therefore, what happens is within the brain, we go from cognitive control to ongoing habitual control, which is just this automatic, predictable behaviors. And it affects the way we think, it affects the decisions that we make, and it also affects the way we emotionally react. We use our emotions habitually. And that is an important key to this because our emotions are, like I said, we use them habitually without even realizing it. Your brain is triggered rapid fire. It sees and anticipates things long before you are ever aware of it, and it's already beginning to trigger reactions. And so that brings me to this point of what we refer to as stress and burnout, and why I talk about essential oils, but I'm not going to talk about them in the sense of just please inhale an oil to relax yourself. I want to emphasize the value that they bring when you do intentionally use essential oils with attention. So being aware of this habitual nature, okay, because it is your nature. It is my nature. It is the nature of nature. It's a form of protection. Habitual control is a mechanism of protection. And we remain in this cycle of protection until we bring attention to it, and then with intention we can regain cognitive control. And that is the introduction of using things like essential oils, not medications, not supplements. I want to really make a distinction right here in this moment, the difference between an oil and an herb, an oil and a supplement, an oil and a medication. Although I've been doing this for well over 40 years, and the reason we have most of our medications, because I started off in pharmacology, is because We've been studying plant constituents for hundreds of years. That's why we have medications. We recognize, and they are still ongoing studies, we recognize how the various constituents within oils. I just finished a book called The Nature of Healthcare, and it's all about essential oils. And I begin to emphasize, it's an illustration, if you will, of how essential oils are being studied and how they impact the genome. And with that said, this is where your medications come from. There again, though, essential oils are not medications, nor do they act like medications. The distinct difference is a medication is very specific in its target. This is not a means of putting down medication, because there may be a time and place in your life where medications are warranted. Okay, this is about using oils as an adjunctive, and especially when you're talking about stress and burnout, you want to make sure that you know what you're mixing, because you do not want to duplicate the mechanism of action, number one, which means repeat the same thing the medications are doing. And you want to make sure that the way they are being cleared and metabolized and eliminated from the body is not along the same liver enzymes, okay, along the same pathway. You want to make sure of all these things. So this is imperative to when you begin to use oils as an adjunctive to medications. That said, they are not the same, because an oil has multiple, I mean, when I say multiple, I'm talking, 20, 30, 40, 50, sometimes more. Like cannabis has, I think, 421 constituents. It's not 420 like we like to talk about. It's actually 421 constituents. And so, but they're not all part of the essential oil, okay? Because some of them are not able to be distilled into an essential oil, but they do actually have a cannabis essential oil. But that said, so there are constituents that do not pass the distillation process, but those that do, it could render your essential oil with having, like I said, 40, 50 different constituents in it, and if they're all affecting different genetics, possibly some of the same, but nevertheless, there's a synergy amongst the compilation of compounds. They're not the same as a medication because they're not targeted. There's not a specific action that is expected of an oil because it's affecting a good portion of the system. It's causing adaptations to occur. And this is one reason, I just want to segue here, one reason why I do not ever recommend using the same oil ongoing, because they are attributing to many adaptations in your system. So learning how to work with them as far as which ones to use, but as far as how to adapt your use of them is critical. And that's what I teach with Revolutionary Aromatherapy. So that is the biggest distinction I can make for you when it comes to medications. When it comes to supplements and food and herbs, very, very different. It is a very concentrated extract of chemicals that are found in a plant that influence genetic activity and cellular activity within the plant. It's like Sir Isaac Newton said, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So an essential oil is basically the plant's form of oxidative stress. It is what the plant is producing in response to stressors, whether it be cyclical or environmental. And thereby, when we produce it, it now helps to relieve and alter our oxidative stress most of the time when you're using them effectively. However, an essential oil will actually trigger inflammation if used inappropriately. Good example of that would be peppermint. Peppermint actually stimulates the production of interleukin-6, which is part of your immune system. And so although there's a short-term effect with peppermint that we all know and love this time of year, or many of us know and love, long-term use of peppermint, especially any kind of mentholated product, but I use peppermint as an example for an essential oil, but menthol itself is the contributing factor to this. So long-term use of something with menthol in it is probably something not advisable this time of year for very many reasons. The other reason would be because it increases tissue permeability, how the tissue absorbs chemicals, and that is specific, very, very specific to the lungs. So again, when we're exposed to the number of viruses in our environment these days, reducing, I was trying to marry a word there. Reducing your use of mentholated products is to your advantage. But that said, that's the reason why oils are not anything like herbs. Herbs do contain a trace amount of oil in them, but nothing close to the concentrated amount. And there are delivery methods that are extremely, extremely beneficial. I mean, that's not even a good word. Just highly recommended. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't need to swallow them. The olfactory bulb is very linked to most anything neurological as far as innervation of the brain and activities and processes throughout your entire system. So simply inhaling them, I would say up close and personal rather than a diffuser, because you're getting it throughout the room. Not to mention the fact diffusing an oil with other people in the room is kind of an insult to their system because it may not be what their system needs. So if you're using genuine essential oils, putting it on your person, under your nose to the front of your neck, is enough to get that into your system as far as helping to improve the way your brain is responding to stressors, as I mentioned, whether it be mental, emotional, physical, and in this case, interfacing with the environment, which is necessary given the level of chemicals that we're exposed to on a daily basis. So I say all that because, again, our emotional reactions can be habitual. We automatically have this automatic way we're going to react to something, right? Automatic interpretation, automatic emotion, and therefore we are now stressed. And until we actually pay attention to that factor, we push ourselves, depending on our wiring, depending on how we are wired for survival, because habitual control is, like I said, a protection mechanism. It is a means of helping you to survive anything. And so if your means of survival is full on, burning the candle at both ends kind of experience, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, being hypersensitive to what other people are needing and making sure that they have their needs. If this is your MO, then what's happening is you're going to burn yourself out. And the inclusion of oils, particular oils, in my group on Facebook, I've got Revolutionary Aromatherapy, where I'm beginning to break down oils per their constituents as a means of illustrating what they really do in the system. But I can assure you that a number of constituents are what we refer to as neuroprotective. And so introducing them in a way that is effective with your system. I always get hung up on that word because it's not just suitable. It's actually working with your system, paying attention to your system, which includes whatever symptoms you're experiencing. So it's not just being stressed. See, that's the thing. We want to breathe in something that smells good because we're feeling stressed. But you got other things going on. Maybe you don't sleep well. Maybe you have a nervous habit. Maybe you eat a lot. Or you don't eat. Maybe whatever you're doing to cope, any of your coping mechanisms are a symptom of how you manage your stress. On top of any sort of pain that you might be dealing with, digestive distress you might be dealing with, sleep issues, all of these need to be taken into account as far as what oils you actually use for stress and burnout. And then from there, you use them in such a way that benefits a more optimal, an optimization of neuroplasticity. They can do that. I mean, they actually support neuroplasticity and neurogenesis so that you can regenerate nerve cells in your brain that become more responsive and less reactive. They help to rewire you from a history of life of being reactive. That's it. You've lived a life of reactions. I've talked a lot about epigenetic memory. This affects your cognitive control because the DNA is consistently signaling to the brain is reacting, and it's just becomes a consistent input of hypersensitivity of your system that is now being translated throughout the body. Pain can be considered hypersensitivity. Okay. Sensitivity to sound, sensitivity to smell. Any level of sensitivity is simply an indication that your body is highly activated right now. And so what there is for you to do is to begin to incorporate or integrate oils that benefit both symptom and system, and now begin to promote an enhancement of neuroplasticity and neurogenesis with the intention of creating a higher level of responsiveness. It's about stop reviewing your health and your life as a transaction, meaning the word transaction means to move forward. Okay. Have it be a becoming, which is to meet up with yourself as you are in this, meet yourself, the full you in your entirety. That's where healing begins, in the wholeness. You better believe me, as somebody who was born anxious, who was terrorized by night terrors. My life was, I was afraid, I was terrified to go to sleep. This was from a very young age. I developed eating disorders. I developed substance abuse disorders. I have had a lot of things going on. So I'm not speaking to you as somebody who's trying to fix our society. I'm coming at this as a means of going, this is where I've come from, and this is where I am. And not being reactive to everything, not using my emotions to manipulate people, not using my emotions to limit me. This is what's happened as a result of intentionally using essential oils as a means of paying attention to my ability to think things through. The ability means power. It's empowering my cognitive control, empowering my cognition, as opposed to my habits. We have an increase in movement disorders. We're seeing a rise in addictive behaviors. We're seeing all of these things, and this is all rigidity, right? Muscle spasticity, muscle tension, Parkinson's, like I said, movement disorders, and then you've got addiction. It's never ending, and yet no one's connecting the dots to habitual control, which is this repetitive behavior. Habits are great when we're paying attention to what we're doing that could be undermining our ability to be healthy in all areas of life, not just physically. But when we become so stuck in doing it this one way, and that we don't allow for the adaptability, then we're basically telling our brain, don't think about it, we're just going to automate it. And you're not an automaton. So I say all that because the introduction of an essential oil intentionally to pay attention to your cognitive abilities, to give attention to your cognitive abilities, is really where you meet up with yourself and the abilities that you possess to really rise above whatever situation you're sitting in and no longer experience the level of emotional distress and burnout. Let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate you watching this. And until we meet again, have a blessed, exquisite day.